The earth is our mother. We must take care of her. The earth is our mother. We must take care of her. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey.
We are glad that you can join us for this virtual service at San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Georgetown, Texas. We are a congregation that welcomes all, promotes personal and spiritual growth, and works for a just, peaceful, and sustainable world. We are Tom and Jan Robertson. You may see us around the church property as part of the Habitat team, caring for plants, removing invasive ones, and more. We have been Unitarian Universalists for over 40 years. We joined San Gabriel Fellowship 2 years ago after moving to Georgetown from Virginia, because our core values and principles align with those of this supportive and caring congregation.
Our Soul Matters theme for November is Holding History, and we also recognize that November is National Native American Heritage Month. So we will attempt to weave these themes throughout our service today, as well as being mindful of our principles that affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person while we search for truth and meaning. Today's sermon format is a bit different. You are invited to sit at the table, so to speak, with our guest, John Layman, who is an elder with the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. John had a long career with Northwest Airlines, and in his retirement, he is living in Sun City. It was a photo of John in a local publication that brought Michelle Argentine and John together for a few conversations, after which John agreed to talk with us today in the service. We think that you will find his story offers a different perspective than what you might expect.
It is our tradition to create sacred space by lighting a chalice, a symbol of our faith. We invite you to join us by lighting your chalice or a candle, even if it is only within your heart. Ever in our midst by Karen G. Johnston, ancestors who spoke with bravest fire, lend us your senses that we may know another world is on her way, breathed into life with our participation in her creation. Forebearers who led the way where there was at first no way. Lend us your persistence, your temerity, your assurance that the moral arc of the universe does indeed bend towards justice. Ones who went before us, sacrificing for a future, not your own. Help us to give of ourselves that the common stones in our hands today might be cathedrals of compassion today, halls of restorative justice tomorrow, sheltering walls of beloved community the day after. It is Sunday morning, the day we gather. Let us be thankful and full of praise to be in the companies of those who came before, yet are ever in our midst.
Ancient mother, I hear you calling. Ancient mother, I hear your song. Ancient mother, I
Hello, I'm Judy Mayo. I'm a member of the St. Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, and today I'm participating on behalf of my husband Sid to honor his Choctaw ancestral heritage. His grandmother was a Choctaw Native American from Louisiana. Today's affirmation was shared by the Indigenous UU ministers who were presenters at the General Assembly's session on covenants and colonialism. This particular affirmation they thought was inspirational and inclusive. It is currently used by the UU Church in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Please read with me. We covenant with one another and with all we hold sacred. We answer the call of love, welcoming all people into the celebration of life, searching for truth and meaning, striving for justice and compassion, to nourish and serve one another, our community, and our world.
Good morning, San Gabriel. It's wonderful to be with you today. I've got a Wonder Box with me, the familiar Wonder Box that we know so well. Is your wondering mind helping you to guess what might be in here? Pretty heavy sounding, clunky sounding this morning? Take a guess. Let's help each other learn and grow. Tell someone near you what you think might be in here. I'm going to open it up. Glass bottle filled with some nice clear water from the tap in my kitchen. We celebrated the gift of water in our water communion service several weeks ago. In that service, we shared our gratitude for all the ways that water sustains us and all life on earth. The book I'm about to share with you is about the sacred work that many Indigenous people undertake to protect water. This book was the 2021 Caldecott winner and was written and illustrated by an Indigenous author-artist team. It is shared with permission from Macmillan Books, and it's called
Water Protectors, written by Carol Lindstrom, illustrated by Michaela Godey. Water is the first medicine, Nokomis told me. We come from water. It nourished us inside our mother's body, as it nourishes us here on Mother Earth. Water is sacred, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. The river's rhythm runs through my veins, runs through my people's veins. My people talk of a black snake that will destroy the land. Boil the water, poison plants and animals, wreck everything in its path. When my people first spoke of the black snake, they foretold that it wouldn't come for many, many years. Now the black snake is here. Its venom burns the land, courses through the water, making it unfit to drink. Take courage. I must keep the black snake away from my village's water. I must rally my people together. To stand for the water, to stand for the land, to stand as one against the black snake. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. It will not be easy. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, the winged ones, the crawling ones, the four-legged, the two-legged, the plants, trees, rivers, lakes, the earth. We are all related. Tears like waterfalls stream down, tracks down my face, tracks down my people's faces. Water has its own spirit, Nokomis told me. Water is alive. Water remembers our ancestors who came before us, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. We are stewards of the earth. Our spirits have not been broken. We are water protectors. We stand. The black snake is in for the fight of its life.
One of the best ways that we can be in solidarity with Indigenous people is to follow their leadership. At the end of her book, Carol Lindstrom asks us to take the Earth Steward and Water Protector Pledge. Let's read that now together. I will do my best to honor Mother Earth and all its living beings, including the water and land. I will always remember to treat the earth as I would like to be treated. I will treat the winged ones, the crawling ones, the four-legged, the two-legged, the plants, trees, rivers, lakes, the earth with kindness and respect. I pledge to make this world a better place by being a steward of the earth and a protector of the water.
The earth is our mother. We must take care of her. The earth is our mother. We must take care of her. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na. Her sacred ground we walk upon. With every step we take, her sacred ground we walk upon. With every step we take. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na. The earth is our mother. She will take care of us. The earth is our mother. She will take care of us. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na. The sky is our Father. We will take care of him. The sky is our Father. We will take care of him. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na. The sea is our sister. We will take care of her. The sea is our sister. We will take care of her. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na. The forest is our brother. We will take care of him. The forest is our brother. We will take care of him. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na. Hey, no, na, ho, no, na, hey, no, na.
I'd like to thank John Layman, who is an elder with the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, for sharing his story with us today. As a San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship recognizes Native American Heritage Month, John, our intention in having you speak to us is to gain a fuller understanding of the variety of experiences of Native Indigenous peoples, their cultures, their heritage, and the richness of that diversity. taking what we learn from these experiences and conversations, we hope to employ that knowledge in our continued efforts towards San Gabriel becoming a beloved community as called by Dr. Martin Luther King. And our youth faith calls us to recognize the inherent dignity and worth of each person, as well as seeking the truth. So again, I thank you for taking time with us today. During
My pleasure.
Thank you. During our interactions today, John, I wanted to know, is there a term that you prefer us to use or that you feel uncomfortable using? Because we hear Indigenous peoples, Natives, First Peoples, Native Americans, and I didn't know what was comfortable for you.
It doesn't make any difference to me at all. Indian is fine, Native American's fine, Indigenous. I'm not hung up on any of that.
Okay, very good to know. All right. So, John, you told me you were born and raised in Butte, Montana. You grew up as a Pottawatomie, and there were also Blackfeet, Kalispel, I think, Navajo, etc.
Kalispel are in Idaho, but
Okay.
I visited that reservation. Blackfeet was the first reservation I ever saw. My father took us to Browning, Montana, so we could see what an Indian reservation was. And at that time, this was in the 50s, and it was very sad. But that was my first recollection of a reservation. Yeah.
So it sounds like you didn't grow up on a reservation.
No, I did not. My father was born on a reservation. My grandmother grew up on a reservation. Her ancestors mostly all grew up on the reservation.
Okay. Did she tell you any stories of what it was like for her?
She was very tight-lipped. She was very ashamed of being an Indian for the simple reason the way they were treated. And so there wasn't a lot of fireside chats about her life. It was,
Understandable.
Yeah. And it was kind of sad.
Yeah, it is. Part of your history.
Right.
Yeah. Similar experience for many of us where grandparents didn't talk about different things. So what was your childhood like, and what did your dad do in the community where you lived?
Well, it was pretty normal, and because Butte was a mining town,
Okay.
there was a lot of different cultures there, but mostly like Irish, Polish, hardworking miners.
Yeah, so you were
Yeah,
exposed to
and-
different people, if you will.
Right. And as far as the Indian heritage goes and stuff like that, I really wasn't, brought up in it.
Okay.
Or it really wasn't discussed much in our household. It was later, probably when I was 19, 20, when I started becoming really interested in my culture and knew that I was a Potawatomi, knew that I was on the rolls, but I didn't really know what that meant when I was growing up.
Right. And some of that, would you say, is because people didn't want to draw attention to being Native American, and they wanted to be assimilated as much as possible to avoid perhaps racism or...
Yes, I do believe that. But my grandmother had the foresight to get myself on the rolls and my sister,
Okay.
so that we would enjoy any benefits, that might be coming our way.
Okay.
And so she didn't talk about it, but she did it.
She recognized
that
the
was done in
importance.
1954.
Okay. You were little.
Yes.
Tell me what your dad did to help support the family.
He had a trucking business and just local
Kind of
deliveries.
delivery.
Yeah. And then at night, he called himself a cook, but he actually was a very good chef. And growing up in Butte, in the mining town, we had a small town called Meterville.
Okay.
And there were a lot of nightclubs there, and that's where he cooked and stuff. And at that particular time, gambling was legal in that part of Montana, but it didn't last very long.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Did your mom work outside the home?
She was a nurse practitioner.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good. So you grew up with hardworking family structure. As a young person, John, did you have any observations about other nations, like how perhaps the Navajo lived? You mentioned you had a chance to go to a reservation. And so I'm curious about what you learned from that and how the Navajo were different in their structure, let's say, as compared to the Citizen Potawatomi Nation.
The Navajo reservation is the largest.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The continental United States. And it encompasses New Mexico, Arizona, I believe part of Colorado. However, they're one of the poorest nations. And I think that is mainly due to education, lack of, and there are good people there, but I just think they could do better if given the opportunity.
And so, how is it that the Citizen Potawatomi Nation structured itself differently? That it's more successful, I guess you would say, right?
It is.
Explain that.
It is, and I think the reason being is that we ended up with some very talented people, and they saw a future of building a nation as a business, and they started, with our Constitution. We've got our own legislative group. We have 13 legislatures that encompass all the United States and Alaska and Hawaii. We have a judicial system. We have our own Supreme Court, which is seven. We have 7 judges on it.
Okay.
They're elected. And right now it consists of 3 women and 4 men.
Oh, wow.
And then we also have 3 other judges, like in a regular court. And anything that's going to be changed with the tribe or anything like that, it goes through the court system.
Okay.
And the legislative process. It's built on like the Constitution of the United States, and it works really well.
It has, hasn't it? And you challenged me to do my research by going online and looking at the Pottawatomie Heritage Center, and I noticed there was a panel for the history that had a timeline. So I was clicking through the centuries and the decades, and I think it was in 1938 is when a constitution was adopted, right? That, and that became a model for many tribes. The federal government, according to the website, was in recognition of the formal tribal governments was an important component of the shift away from federal Indian policy of assimilation. And so it started back then with that 1938 Constitution, right?
The Constitution's been amended twice since then. I believe once in the early 60s, and then the last one was 2007.
Oh, okay, so pretty recent, actually.
Yeah.
Very good.
To keep up with the times.
It seemed like as we talked prior, that the Potawatomi chose, I think they had elders and leaders that had foresight. You talked about vision and how they decided to take percentage of income or profits to reinvest in a community. Would you explain that a little more?
Yeah, most anything that they get, whether it be from our own resource or the government, at least 60% goes back into rebuilding the tribe and expanding the enterprises And they've done a really good job. We just opened up an industrial park.
Oh, okay.
And, it's right on the railroad line and the interstate. It's almost a capacity now.
Wow.
And so they're doing really well with that. We've got our own cement company, got our own insulation company, got our own sod company. I mean, they do well. Plus, we've got 2 casinos. We've got our own grocery stores. We have our own bank. We have our own medical facilities. We have
I think
our
did you
own
mention
golf course.
Yeah, that we're interested in.
But-
And schools.
And yes, and we do have a scholarship program.
Okay.
And what is unique about this, a lot of people have come back to work in the nation, and it has really helped grow
It continues
possibility.
instead of
Yes.
being a brain drain that we
Yeah.
hear from maybe Africa or China
Yeah.
or wherever. Yeah, they're reinvesting themselves into that community for
and
the
it's
sake of it.
really, really paying off.
Yeah. John, when you were mentioning about the structure that you all have with judicial and legislative, and we refer to you as an elder, can you tell me a little bit more about what does that mean? What might your responsibilities mean?
Well, as elder, as you may assume, means that you need to be a certain age.
Okay.
An elder is basically anyone over 55. However, there are different responsibilities. We do vote. We do get some of the legislative policies that they want to change and stuff like that. And if we want to give input, we can. It's not required, but it's appreciated. And so being an elder is trying to help keeping the culture alive and making sure that the people in your family that are eligible
Okay.
become members of,
Okay.
of the Potawatomi Nation.
All right. Do elders represent areas or have a responsibility for a certain area, kind of like a legislator would, or not necessarily? So,
Not really, but
okay.
I know it's appreciated if we join in the meetings, the legislative meetings, which we have 2 a year.
Okay.
And in our district, I'm in District 2, and it really helps bring everything together.
Right, and they're getting more input
Right, and-
from people
right.
as they make decisions.
Right.
So kind of a more democratic
Right.
type process. One of the things you passed on to me was this newspaper, the Haunikin, for additional information, and I was very impressed by the many, many things they tried to cover. Can you go back a little further in your history where the Pottawatomie started and then some of that migration that happened?
Basically, they started in Nova Scotia
Oh,
and then migrated into what they called the Northern Territory. And that included the Northern United States and Canada. And then basically they settled mostly in Michigan and were there, that part of the United States, for many, many years.
okay.
And then they were, I believe it was 1830, they were moved from Michigan to Kansas. And there were 859 of them, but they marched. And then they ended up being the Trail of Death.
Okay.
Many, many died along that trail.
Men, women, and children.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that.
then that's when the reservation
Was sort of
started in
established.
Kansas, yeah.
Okay. And then there was, how did you get from Kansas to Oklahoma? How did that split occur?
Well, as I mentioned before, that was in 1861. Oklahoma was called Indian Territory. And they were allotting parcels of land to the Indians in Kansas if they wanted to move to Oklahoma.
Okay.
And there were 14 families that took that. One of them was my great-great-grandfather. And that's when they started the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. The ones that did not leave, and there were about 800 at that time, stayed on the reservation in Kansas, and they became the Prairie Band of the Pottawatomie. And so there was a division there. But that's how they ended up in Oklahoma.
Okay.
Because at that time, nobody thought Oklahoma was worth anything. So they made it Indian Territory.
Was it years later when some oil was discovered in Oklahoma?
Yes.
Is that, okay.
Yes.
Well, you mentioned...
and one of the offerings, now I don't know if this is fact or fiction, but
Okay.
one of the offerings to give them parcels in Oklahoma was to make the reservation smaller because of the agricultural aspects in Kansas that was doing so well.
Oh, interesting. All right. So you mentioned 14 basically founding families, is that right?
Right.
And so what I noticed always on the back side of these newspapers are obituaries. And not only do they list the name, but they also reference the family name. And I see that as one way of keeping that heritage, that lineage connected and relevant. But, you know, the other thing that impressed me was at the bottom of the obituary page, there is a notice that there's a burial assistance fund available.
Yes.
if they are a member. And to me, that spoke very highly of the nation seems to care about your members from the beginning all the way to the end. The other beauty that I liked about this, it's called Walking On. So we're talking a little bit about ancestry and keeping that lineage going. How do you think how the nation keeps its heritage alive, or you personally?
Well, a lot of the tribes have powwows. We used to have powwows, and that has been changed to a family reunion.
Oh, I like that concept.
And what that means, when we were put on the reservation, there were 46 original families on the reservation. And out of that 46, it did entail over 800 people. But the 46 families were given Anglo names so they could keep track of them.
Okay.
And so those names are the ones that you see, like on the obituary in the family name. My family name originally was Anderson, but we identify as Hardin because in 1861, as I'd mentioned, that's when they started the Citizen Potawatomi Nation.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, my ancestors that were first put on the reservation were Anderson.
Okay.
And then through the marriage and different things
Changed.
with the names.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a family reunion once a year. We honor at least 2 families. Every now and then there may be 3, but generally 2. And that brings people together, and that's in Shawnee.
Okay.
And then we go through the cultural center, we go through the dances, the weaving, it's a week-long deal, and it's you get to know people that you're actually related to that you didn't know.
Do you find many of the youth come with their families?
Yes, they
Okay.
do. And that's really encouraged, and they they even have dances for, different age groups.
To teach them.
That,
That's wonderful.
and different, like the sewing and different things like that. And so it's fun for them. We have a softball tournament, we have a golf tournament, we have just a lot to do,
Yes.
and just a big family reunion.
How many Pottawatomie are there about today?
The census shows just about 30,000. And out of that 30,000, 10,000 of them live in Oklahoma.
Wow.
The other 20,000 are scattered around the United States, and that's why we have the legislative reps. And
Also in Alaska and Hawaii, even.
and so that works out well, because even though you're not living in Oklahoma, you're still represented, and with the paper and now the internet and everything else, you can just keep up like you were there.
Keep connected for sure.
Yeah.
So a lot of folks, as they're researching their ancestry, are taking these DNA tests. They become real popular. And I imagine when somebody discovers that they may have Native American blood, they're going to get all excited, aren't they, about all these benefits that they'll be privy to. Well, is that really true, that they have access to monies and et cetera?
No, not really, because the DNA will tell you that you're Native American. However, it won't tell you what tribe. And there are 575 tribes in the United States. 229 of them are in Alaska.
Holy cow.
Yes.
Okay.
29 of them are in Oklahoma.
Okay.
So that gives you an idea. And out of the 78 tribes, that consist of over 5 million people.
Wow.
And so you have to, like with the Pottawatomie, you have to show proof of heritage, to be a member.
Okay.
You just can't get a DNA test and say, I'm a Pottawatomie. It has to go through, our screening and everything.
And that's why it was important for your grandmother to get you on those rolls.
Yes.
She was a living ancestor to verify that for you.
Right.
That's interesting. So, John, sometimes we hear discussions or movements about reparations for Indigenous people, and I wonder what was your opinion or thoughts on that?
Well, as I have mentioned, there's 575 tribes, 5 million people. I think it's a pipe dream. I don't think the United States government would ever settle anything like that. That's just my personal opinion. However, if there was anything to be done, I would love to see it go into educating the tribes. I think that would help immensely, and to help further them, because there are a lot that are poverty-stricken. And there's a lot, like our tribe, that have done very, very well and will continue to do well. But it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Okay.
So I just think it would be great to see if there was any monies to be given up, no matter how small they are, that would be in education.
Money better spent, because
Yes,
you're
because
seeing...
I just think it, like with us, it's everything. And
It's empowering.
right.
Right.
And I think it would help a lot of the lesser tribes.
Other tribes. No, that's well stated.
But
So, during the course of your career and in some of these moves, did you find yourself subjected to any kind of prejudices or racism?
Not me personally, no. Northwest knew I was Native American and stuff like that. And actually, they carried me as a minority,
Okay.
and which was fine with me. And when I lived in Arizona, that's when I visited the Navajo Nation.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, I think they're discriminated against, but again, my opinion. And some of the, like the Papago Indians, that reservation is right outside Phoenix, I feel they're discriminated against. But, you know, that again is just my opinion, my observation.
Did you notice any kind of difference moving from north to south or east to west? I think you talked to me a little bit about when you came to Memphis.
Yes, that was quite a cultural shock, actually.
And how so?
Well, that was my first experience being in the South. And I've heard a lot of stories and stuff like that, but I think there's a lot of discrimination in the South. And my experience with the people that I worked with in Memphis is almost 70% black. And with the people that I worked with, they're very hard workers, good people. I never had a problem with them. But the way they were treated by some of the white Southern people, I thought was terrible.
It was a bit shocking for you.
Yeah, and I really didn't understand it. And so that was my experience. Of course, growing up in Montana, we had one African-American family. Their name was Brown. Went to school with them. Fabulous.
Yeah.
But until I went to Memphis, I really didn't have real exposure to what was going on and what you read about and hear about.
Yes.
But living there for 15 years, I saw it firsthand, and it was kind of disheartening. And it kind of made me realize why my grandmother didn't want to talk about the way she was treated and stuff like that. So it was kind of an eye-opener there, and I kind of understood it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it's a shame.
Yeah. So, John, as you're talking about some of the discrimination, again, I was reading these newspapers and learning about Jim Thorpe. And they've got this picture in here with Jim wearing two different shoes. Can you tell us a little bit what happened there? I guess he ran the race and won in two different pairs.
He did, but his shoes were stolen from him because they didn't want him to participate, is the way I interpret it. And obviously, he was quite an athlete. He did really well. He lost his gold medals because I think again, my opinion, that he was discriminated against because they didn't want an Indian
Yes.
winning all these gold
Having the
medals.
glory.
I mean, they took him away because he got paid, I think it was $14 for playing baseball. You know, and they considered him that he was not.
Who was a professional, not a non-professional. I think that was the Olympics in 1912 or thereabouts, right?
Right. And now if you go to the Olympics and watch them play basketball, all their players are multi-millionaires.
Yes.
So
basketball, hockey
I mean,
players.
it has come a lot.
Right?
It has evolved a lot.
Yes.
So, but I do think that was the main reason that he lost them.
It was stolen. He found them in the trash. Didn't he pull two mismatched shoes out of the trash? Yeah.
And he was at Carlisle, the Indian school. My grandmother was sent there also. Jim Thorpe's brother, twin brother, was there also, and he died, I believe, of pneumonia because from what I've read, it was not a good place to be.
Right.
And my grandmother was at school with him. They were just about the same age.
And she managed to survive somehow.
Yeah.
Probably another experience that she really didn't talk about.
Right, and they were pulled away from their families and sent there to try to give them an education and stuff.
But forcing them to dress as white people would have in those days, right? No other language but English.
Right.
As I read an article about, you've got all these children from all over being sent to this school, and they all speak different languages, and consequently they can't even speak to one another what their fears are or concerns, etc.
Right.
So in our we have a weekly newsletter, electronic newsletter, and so during the month of November we have been posting articles or short videos for people to do more research, and included in that is information on the Carlisle boarding school. A couple months ago I was listening to an NPR show, and they were interviewing two founding organizers, this nonprofit boarding school healing project. And that's where I started to pick up and learn a little bit more. So do know that we will reference those kind of things in our newsletter to educate our membership a little bit more on what has gone on in the past as a way of learning.
Thank you. You know, I have no problem, telling people that I'm part Indian. And
do they say anything goofy to you about, well, you don't look Indian, or?
That's true, and I don't. And that's why there's 5 million of us out there, and probably less than 1% are actually the stereotype Indian that you think. So.
One of the things I think we try to do in our congregation is to encourage people to learn, maybe through reading. There are a lot of books written by Indigenous or Natives, and to read about the true history. And so we will continue to honor and celebrate you that way.
And I think that's wonderful. And that's the way it should be done.
Right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, if people want to know more, they can visit the Pottawatomie Heritage Center, which is located in Shawnee, Oklahoma. If you can't go there, they do have a virtual online tour you can take and learn more. Also, in the newspaper that John provided, there's a brand new museum that opened up in Oklahoma City, I believe, called the First Americans Museum. And what also intrigued me about this, John, the whole architecture was very intentional, outside and inside, to incorporate the movement of the sun with the solstice and the equinox. Very intentional with our earth-centered beliefs in sacredness. So folks should have a chance to explore more and learn more on a short driving trip. Is there anything else before we end, John, that you wanted to express or want to know? Or
I just
want us to know?
appreciate your interest in it and the church's interest in it. And I think it's wonderful to get this word out.
Great. We are glad to do that, to continue. I believe we're not about the stories written by the white victors. We don't want the whitewash story anymore. We don't want the romanticized versions out there. We'd like to stop the falsehoods and be a part of our social justice, is be a part of action to bring the true history to life. So thank you, John. It's been great getting to know you and to learn more about the Pottawatomie Nation. And namaste. Peace be with you. May you be well. Thanks again.
Thank you. And with you.
With my long tail feathers floating as I fly, I circle around the boundaries of the earth. With my long tail feathers floating as I fly, I circle around the boundaries of the earth. Hey, hey, what's the name? Hey, hey, what's the name? Hey, hey, what's the name? Kayo, kaya, kayo, kaya, kayo, kaya, kayo, kaya.
Remembering That We Do Not Walk Alone by Reverend Scott Taylor. May we remember that we never walk out into the world alone. We stand on the shoulders of brave and generous ones who have gone before. We walk beside companions ready to catch us when we fall. We hold memories of dear ones in our hearts who keep us connected to our center. May we make this our most important work, to remember that who we are does not end at the edges of our own skin. May it be so.